ExamPrep.School. Montana Property and Casualty Insurance Consultant Exam. Exam code InsMT-PCC57 or OPMT-PCC57. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Casualty insurance policies and forms. Fundamentals of financial analysis. Montana statutes and rules. Pertinent to P&C insurance consultants. P&C policy provisions, terms, and concepts. Principles of risk management. Property insurance policies and forms. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Which of the following is an example of pure risk rather than speculative risk? A. Investing in commodity futures that may yield gains or losses. B. Running a retail store that could turn a profit or incur a loss. C. Launching a new product that might succeed or fail in the market. D. Owning property that could suffer damage from a fire. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is D. Pure risk involves only the possibility of loss or no loss, such as property damage, whereas speculative risks include potential gains. Reason A is not correct. This involves potential gains as well as losses, which defines speculative risk. Reason B is not correct. This scenario includes the possibility of profit, making it speculative. Reason C is not correct. The chance of success or failure implies potential gain, so it is speculative. Question 2. Which of the following is not a characteristic of an ideally insurable risk? A. Losses occur by chance rather than by design. B. Premiums can be predicted and remain affordable. C. Exposures form a large homogeneous group. D. Individual losses are precisely predictable in timing. The correct answer is D. Ideally insurable risks have uncertainties at the individual level, although aggregate losses can be predicted, so timing of each event remains unpredictable. Reason A is not correct. Fortuity ensures losses are accidental, which is a key insurable risk characteristic. Reason B is not correct. Actuarial calculations aim to set premiums that are both predictable and affordable. Reason C is not correct. A large similar group of exposures allows for reliable loss prediction through pooling. Question 3. Which factor best distinguishes self-insurance from general risk retention? A. Opting not to transfer risk and to pay losses out of current earnings. B. Establishing formal reserves or funds in anticipation of losses. C. Using high deductibles under an insurance policy to reduce premiums. D. Transferring portions of risk to a reinsurer or captive insurer. The correct answer is B. Self-insurance involves deliberate funding through established reserves, whereas risk retention may be informal and unfunded. Reason A is not correct. This describes unfunded retention, not the funded approach of self-insurance. Reason C is not correct. Deductibles under an external policy represent partial transfer, not self-insurance. Reason D is not correct. Transferring risk is the opposite of retaining it internally. Question 4. A food processing plant experiences frequent conveyor belt breakdowns that cause costly production delays. As risk manager, which loss control program would most effectively minimize downtime at its source? A. Establish a predictive maintenance schedule using condition monitoring sensors. B. Purchase mechanical breakdown coverage as part of the property insurance program. C. Increase on-site inventory of spare belts for rapid replacement. D. Train operation staff to perform daily visual inspections of belts. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is establishing a predictive maintenance schedule with condition monitoring sensors because it proactively identifies wear and addresses mechanical issues before breakdown. Purchasing coverage shifts risk rather than reducing it. Stocking spare belts aids recovery but doesn't prevent failures, and daily inspections lack the predictive precision of sensor-based monitoring. Reason B is not correct. Purchasing coverage transfers risk to an insurer instead of reducing equipment failure frequency. Reason C is not correct. Stocking spare belts supports post-failure recovery but does not prevent breakdowns. Reason D is not correct. Visual inspections are less predictive and may miss early signs of mechanical wear. Question 5. A specialty chemical manufacturer ships sensitive products nationwide and seeks to transfer the transport risk through insurance. Which insurance contract best accomplishes this objective? A. Add an inland marine floater endorsement to the existing commercial property policy. B. Obtain certificates of insurance naming the manufacturer as additional insured on the carrier's policy. C. Purchase a motor truck, cargo legal liability insurance policy. D. Negotiate hold harmless agreements in the carrier's contract. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is to purchase a motor truck, cargo legal liability insurance policy, because it directly insures the loss or damage of goods in transit. An inland marine floater endorsement may not cover transportation liability comprehensively. Certificates of insurance don't create first-party coverage, and hold harmless agreements shift risk contractually rather than through insurance. Reason A is not correct. A floater endorsement on property may not include carrier liability for goods in transit. Reason B is not correct. Certificates of insurance do not provide first-party indemnity for the manufacturer's losses. Reason D is not correct. Hold harmless agreements transfer risk contractually but do not provide insurance indemnification. Question 6. A regional restaurant experiences recurring grease fires from its open flame cooking equipment. Management decides to eliminate open flame cooking rather than invest in additional suppression systems. This decision primarily exemplifies which risk treatment method? A. Risk transfer by contracting with a third-party fire suppression service. B. Risk reduction by installing new suppression technology. C. Risk avoidance by discontinuing the hazardous activity. D. Risk retention by budgeting for potential fire losses. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is risk avoidance because management elects to discontinue open flame cooking entirely, thereby eliminating the exposure. Contracting for services transfers risk but does not remove the hazard. Installing suppression reduces fire severity, and budgeting for losses retains the risk. Reason A is not correct. Contracting with a fire service transfers rather than eliminates the cooking hazard. Reason B is not correct. Installing suppression systems reduces severity but does not remove the risk source. Reason D is not correct. Budgeting for losses retains the exposure instead of avoiding it. Question 7. A retail chain reports dozens of minor slip and fall claims each year, averaging $500 per incident. Which risk treatment strategy balances high frequency and low severity most cost-effectively? A. Purchase a captive insurer to cover all slip and fall losses. B. Implement a comprehensive slip prevention employee training program. C. Increase the deductible level on the general liability policy. D. Establish a self-insurance fund for small liability claims. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is increasing the deductible because it retains frequent low-severity losses up to the deductible and shifts only larger claims to the insurer. A captive requires higher fixed costs, training reduces frequency but not cost retention, and a self-insurance fund assumes all losses rather than using standard deductible retention. Reason A is not correct. Forming a captive involves significant capital commitments disproportionate for minor claims. Reason B is not correct. Training may reduce frequency but does not address cost sharing effectively. Reason D is not correct. A self-insurance fund retains all losses and lacks the cost efficiency of a deductible structure. Question 8. Under a commercial property policy, which of the following best illustrates personal property of others? A. Leased office photocopiers used by the business. B. Valuable customer samples held on consignment. C. Finished goods inventory owned by the business. D. Furniture and fixtures installed in the sales showroom. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is personal property of others refers to property the insured holds but does not own, such as customer goods on consignment. Reason A is not correct. Leased equipment remains recognized as insured business personal property under a lease agreement, not property of others. Reason C is not correct. Finished goods owned by the business are classified as its own business personal property. Reason D is not correct. Furniture and fixtures permanently installed are owned and insured as business personal property. Question 9. Which of the following scenarios represents a time element loss under a commercial property policy? A. Replacement cost of a hail-damaged roof. B. Loss of income due to evacuation after a fire. C. Cost to repair vandalized exterior lighting. D. Theft of electronic equipment from the warehouse. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is time element losses compensate for lost income or extra expenses resulting from physical damage that interrupts operations. Reason A is not correct. Repair costs for physical damage are direct property losses, not time element losses. Reason C is not correct. Repair of vandalism is a direct physical damage claim under property coverage. Reason D is not correct. Theft of equipment is a direct loss to property, not a loss of income or extra expense. Question 10. Which peril historically accounts for the largest percentage of insured losses for commercial buildings? A. Water damage from ruptured supply lines. B. Fire or lightning. C. Windstorm and hail. D. Smoke contamination following mechanical failure. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is fire or lightning, which has consistently been the leading cause of insured property losses in commercial structures. Reason A is not correct. While water damage is a significant cause, it ranks below fire or lightning in overall insured loss frequency. Reason C is not correct. Windstorm and hail losses are substantial but historically less than fire or lightning. Reason D is not correct. Smoke damage contributes to overall cost but occurs less frequently as a primary peril. Question 11. A bakery's ovens were destroyed in a kitchen fire, forcing a 2-week closure. While the ovens themselves are covered under the property policy, the bakery also lost sales revenue during the shutdown. Which of the following represent a consequential loss rather than a direct property loss? A. The revenue not earned while the bakery was closed. B. The expense to clean soot from the kitchen walls. C. The cost to replace the damaged ovens. D. The legal costs arising from customer claims. The correct answer is A. The revenue not earned during the closure is a financial impact that arises as a result of the direct damage to property and is classified as a consequential loss or business interruption loss. Reason B is not correct. This cleaning expense is a direct remediation cost of damaged property, not a lost income consequence. Reason C is not correct. This is a direct cost to repair or replace damaged property, not a consequential loss. Reason D is not correct. Legal costs relate to liability exposure and are not a financial loss caused by interruption of operations. Question 12. A commercial office building has a replacement cost of $120,000 a useful life of 10 years and has been in service for 4 years when partial damage occurs. Under an actual cash value policy using straight-line depreciation, what amount will the insurer pay for the loss before any deductible? A. $48,000. B. $72,000. C. $120,000. D. $96,000. The correct answer is B. Actual cash value is calculated as replacement cost minus depreciation. Straight-line depreciation for 4 of 10 years on $120,000 is $48,000. So the insurer pays $120,000 minus $48,000 equals $72,000. Reason A is not correct. That represents only the total depreciation amount, not the remaining value. Reason C is not correct. This is the full replacement cost and ignores depreciation under ACV. Reason D is not correct. This figure reflects 20% depreciation but does not match the 4-year proportion. Question 13. A warehouse has been unoccupied for 90 days after the tenant vacated. During that period, several windows were broken and equipment was vandalized. Which type of loss exposure is demonstrated by this scenario? A. Increased liability for visitor injuries. B. Theft and vandalism risk. C. Fire damage from cooking equipment. D. Wear and tear of mechanical systems. The correct answer is B. Vacant and unoccupied properties are subject to higher risk of theft and vandalism because there is no regular activity to deter criminals. Reason A is not correct. An empty building reduces foot traffic and liability to visitors, so this risk decreases. Reason C is not correct. Cooking-related fires require occupancy, which is absent in a vacant warehouse. Reason D is not correct. Normal wear and tear is gradual and related to use, not vacancy. Question 14. In the context of tort law, what best characterizes the difference between legal liability and civil liability? A. Legal liability arises exclusively from criminal statutes, whereas civil liability arises from tort or contract obligations. B. Legal liability is the enforceability of any duty under law, while civil liability pertains only to duties imposed by tort law. C. Legal liability refers to obligations enforceable through sanctions by government authority, whereas civil liability denotes monetary obligations adjudicated in civil courts. D. Legal liability arises solely from constitutional provisions, while civil liability covers breaches of statutes and administrative rules. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is stated because legal liability encompasses obligations enforceable by government sanctions across criminal and civil contexts, whereas civil liability specifically refers to monetary duties resolved in civil court proceedings. Reason A is not correct. This wrongly confines legal liability to criminal statutes and overstates civil liability's scope by including contract obligations without distinction. Reason B is not correct. This inaccurately portrays legal liability as any enforceable duty and mischaracterizes civil liability as only tort-based. Reason D is not correct. This incorrectly limits legal liability to constitutional sources and misstates the origins of civil liability. Question 15. Which of the following correctly enumerates the traditional elements required to establish a negligence claim? A. Duty, proximate cause, breach of duty, actual damages. B. Causation, duty, breach, injury. C. Duty, breach, causation, damages. D. Breach, duty, damages, causation. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is stated because a negligence claim requires proof of a legal duty, breach of that duty, causation linking breach to harm, and damages resulting from the breach. Reason A is not correct. This distractor mislabels causation as proximate cause and implies a separate breach label, disrupting the standard element phrasing. Reason B is not correct. This lists elements in an incorrect sequence and substitutes injury for the broader concept of damages. Reason D is not correct. This presents the correct elements in an incorrect order, which does not match the traditional sequence. Question 16. An insured at a corporate holiday party became verbally provoked and struck a coworker, causing a visible injury. Under a standard commercial general liability policy, which classification best describes this tort? A. Strict liability tort. B. Negligence tort. C. Intentional tort. D. Vicarious liability tort. The correct answer is C. A deliberate act causing harm is an intentional tort. The other categories involve liability without deliberate intent or classification of responsibility. Reason A is not correct. Strict liability addresses harm from inherently dangerous activities without regard to intent or negligence. Reason B is not correct. Negligence requires breach of duty and unintentional harm, not deliberate striking. Reason D is not correct. Vicarious liability imposes responsibility on one for another's actions, not classification of the act itself. Question 17. A chemical company stores large quantities of chlorine gas in an urban facility. A leak injures a passerby who sues under a strict liability theory. Which legal principle most directly supports strict liability here? A. Abnormally dangerous activity principle. B. Res ipsa loquitur doctrine. C. Attractive nuisance doctrine. D. Assumption of risk doctrine. The correct answer is A. Storage of toxic gas is classified as an abnormally dangerous activity, which gives rise to strict liability absent a showing of negligence. Reason B is not correct. Res ipsa loquitur shifts the burden in negligence cases, not strict liability for dangerous activities. Reason C is not correct. Attractive nuisance relates to child trespass hazards on premises, not ultra-hazardous operations. Reason D is not correct. Assumption of risk is a defense mechanism, not the basis for imposing liability. Question 18. A courier employed by Quick Ship Logistics deviated from the assigned delivery route to pick up personal groceries and caused a collision. Under respondeat superior, which fact most clearly absolves the employer of vicarious liability? A. The driver left the route to run a personal errand. B. The driver had prior approval to adjust the route for traffic delays. C. The driver was delivering to a client at the time of the accident. D. The driver was on call and carrying company documents. The correct answer is A. Leaving the employment scope for a personal errand constitutes a frolic, which breaks the causal link required for vicarious liability under respondeat superior. Reason B is not correct. Route adjustments authorized by the employer remain within the scope of duty. Reason C is not correct. Delivering to a client is within the scope of employment and would support employer liability. Reason D is not correct. Being on call and carrying company materials relates to work duties, not a personal excursion. Question 19. On a classified balance sheet, which of the following is reported within the stockholder's equity section and reduces total equity? A. Treasury stock. B. Preferred stock. C. Additional paid-in capital. D. Retained earnings. The correct answer is A. Treasury stock is a contra-equity account recorded as a deduction within stockholders' equity, whereas the other items all increase equity. Reason B is not correct. Preferred stock increases equity rather than reducing it. Reason C is not correct. Additional paid-in capital is a component of equity and does not reduce total equity. Reason D is not correct. Retained earnings represent accumulated profits and add to equity rather than decrease it. Question 20. According to USGAAP, which of the following equations correctly computes net income? A. Revenues minus expenses plus gains minus losses. B. Revenues minus gains minus expenses plus losses. C. Revenues plus losses minus expenses minus gains. D. Revenues plus gain minus expenses minus losses. The correct answer is D. Net income under USGAAP is calculated by adding revenues and gains, then subtracting expenses and losses. Reason A is not correct. This sequence subtracts expenses before subtracting losses and does not properly group gains and losses. Reason B is not correct. This sequence erroneously subtracts gains and adds losses, contrary to the definitions of gains and losses. Reason C is not correct. This equation treats losses as additions and gains as subtractions, reversing their correct impact. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.